Thanks very much, Natalie, and thanks to everybody for coming in to attend this session. I'm really excited about the collaborative partnership. It started a couple of years ago and grew out of some work that Comcare did around the health benefits of good work. And we really wanted to take that work forward in a way that joined together the various sectors that play in the space that Comcare plays in, and other agencies, other jurisdictions play in. So what we did was to think about good work and what that means and the health benefits of good work, and then focus on the cohort of people for whom that is not a reality. So people with a temporary or permanent physical or mental health condition that impacts their ability to work. And through that lens, we looked to see who the key partners were that we needed to get on board, who we could work with in a collaborative partnership to actually improve outcomes for people in that cohort. It's not a workers' compensation lens, it's not an insurance lens, it's not an income support lens. It's a combination of lenses that look at that cohort of people and say people with those conditions struggle to find work, they struggle to stay in work, and if they are injured, they struggle to recover at and return to work. So that was the focus for us, and we decided to think pretty ambitiously, really, and think about what are the outcomes that we'd really like to see. And we focused initially on what are the barriers that people face in getting work, staying in work, returning to work, and who are the key players and partners that we needed to bring on board. So we had a number of discussions and sort of took our grand plan and grand thinking to my colleagues who are joining me here today, and some who aren't. The Insurance Council of Australia was an early adopter. They saw very much the value in looking at it from their perspective about people who access the insurance benefit system. Of course, individual organisations such as Employers Mutual, who deal every day with focusing on getting people back to work and into work. The ACTU is a key player because we have a close relationship as Comcare with some of the individual unions, the CPSU in particular, because they are focused on the journey that their members have in going through compensation and also insurance systems. And we thought the ACTU was a key player in bringing that member experience to the work that we did. The Department of Social Services, who looks after the great cohorts of people who are in receipt of some sort of benefit, not only disability support pension, but also other allowances and benefits. The Department of Jobs and Small Business, have you changed the name yet again, Martin? No, I've got it right, thank you. Which was the Department of Employment when this started, because they are focused on helping unemployed people get into work and back to work. And a large percentage of the cohort of people that Martin's providers look after are the very cohort who we were considering we wanted to focus on. We have a couple of experts who we thought were vital to the collaborative partnership as well. Professor Nikki Ellis, who's our Work for Health advisor, and Lucy Brogden, who chairs the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance and is also chair of the National Mental Health Condition, because part of the cohort that we really wanted to focus on, one of the key issues is mental health. And one of the main barriers is about people with mental health issues staying in work, about the workplace supporting them to actually get into work as well. So we convinced all of our partners to contribute either money or in-kind work and started with an agenda that looked at focusing on 4 key projects. The first of which was led by DSS, is the cross-sector project. It looked for the first time, and as I said this morning, groundbreaking research which for the first time tried to map the flow of people across the various systems. So the income support systems, the benefit systems, the life insurance, the superannuation, the compensation systems, regardless of the fact that there are differences across the jurisdictions in some of those. And you'll hear a bit more about that from Ross, so I won't steal your thunder. But it was a fascinating piece of research to see the difficulties people face in navigating all of our individual systems, the journeys that they have to make, the stories that they have to tell you 25 million and 6 times because we're all different. And we did that piece of work so that we could focus on the next step, which is how do we make it easier? What can we do in providing support systems to this cohort of individuals to make the journey easier and to prevent them from falling through the cracks, as is often the case. So that piece of work was absolutely vital. We also focused through the Department of Jobs and Small Business on employer mobilisation, as we called it, because we need to understand the attitudes of employers, the barriers that those attitudes face, present for people who are flowing through the system and trying to get into work, and looking again at how we can get employers playing the role of ensuring the workplaces are healthy and safe, yes, but also providing the opportunities for the cohort of people with a temporary or permanent physical or mental condition that impacts their ability to work. So Martin's people have been leading some excellent work and research, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from Martin as part of the panel discussion. The employee awareness is another area of our focus, and EML are leading that project, looking at making sure that employees and potential employees have the knowledge, have the ability to navigate the system, that the supports are there for them to do that. And you'll hear a little bit about that from Mark today too. We then focused on the last project that we have underway, and that is the other crucial player in this scene is the GP and the supports that GPs need to actually help people get back into work or get into work, to focus on what people can do, not what they can't do. So that's been led by the Australasian Faculty of Occupational Environmental Medicine, who I forgot to mention as one of our key partners too, Robin Chase. And that really is looking at what are those key supports that GPs need, what is the role of the GP in getting into work and helping people return to work, and how can we support them? How can GPs be supported to actually facilitate part of that journey for the individuals? So that was what we've set out to do. We've made an enormous amount of progress, I'm very happy to say, across all of those project areas. There has been a great collaborative effort from all of the partners that have come to the table, and we are looking for more partners, because we're looking for more money, of course, but even in kind and assistance. So we've run a series of working groups around each project. We have hundreds of organisations and individuals who've come along to those working groups to participate, to give us the benefit of their knowledge and expertise, and make sure that we actually have a very broad church of input into what we're doing. So I'm absolutely thrilled. This is, it seems for me like it's been a long journey to get to where we have. But actually, if you think about what we've achieved, it's a very short journey. It's a very impressive journey for the amount that we have achieved, and you'll hear specifically from Ross about the cross-sector project and the research, and I think you'll all be blown away as we were with that. We'll continue the work and we'll continue to focus on those 4 areas. We had looked at another key area, and that is the role of rehabilitation and rehab providers. We have decided that what we've got at the moment is enough to focus our minds, but we realise that other element is a key player and a key piece of the puzzle. So our aim is to make a difference. Our aim is to make a difference for those individuals who do struggle to find work, to stay in work, to return to or recover at work. And I think the work that the partnership's doing at the moment is absolutely fantastic. So thank you to the partners, and I will now hand over to Ross to tell you about some of the stunning research. Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me, before I get started, I just wanted to let you know I'm suffering from a terrible case of man flu. So excuse me if I need to have a few more drinks than usual to keep the voice going. So before we kick off, I'd just like to acknowledge the role of my co-authors, Professor Alex Colley and Michael Di Donato in this project. And then also to acknowledge the funding sources from the collaborative partnership itself, the DSS, and we had some expert input from Dr. Bronwyn Morecambe, Professor Natasha Lannon, and to thank those interviewees who took part with helping us actually put together what we needed to put this piece of research together, including providing us with the data that we needed to actually try and piece together this puzzle, and it definitely is a puzzle. So everyone knows the health benefits of good work. We've been through that before. The overarching objective of this program was to actually try and map what happens when someone is actually unable to work. What are the different possibilities that people could go through when they need some sort of support, whether it be income or medical services that they need to help them either to stay in work or get back to work. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to try and briefly summarise the report. It's about a 90-page report. If you have the opportunity to grab one of the handouts at the front, you can get a bit of an idea of, I guess, the scale and the scope of the report from here. And I'm going to try and keep it pretty high level and not take too much time from the discussion with the members on the panel. So the aim was to map out the systems of support, and in particular, we wanted to identify the systems and their associated services to be able to determine the numbers of people within the different systems and their movement between the systems and their accesses to services when they're in each of those systems. But also to identify the data sources that can be used to indicate what helps people get into and stay into work, but what also are some of the things that lead to them either leaving or exiting a different system, and what supports and services are available to them when they're out of work. We wanted to consider and document how the services in different sectors interact, or at least have the potential to interact, and identify critical points at which people move between systems and the triggers for that movement, and most importantly, to provide direction and guidance for where the best opportunities lie for improvements to how those systems might actually work together and improve the outcomes for the people that Jennifer described. So to take you through the systems that were in scope of our project, the first was employer-provided entitlements, basically sick leave, provided by or legislated by employers are legislated to provide. In terms of social security, we focused on 4 particular services that have an element of where work capacity might be affected, so the people within those benefit structures. So the DSP obviously being a key area there. For workers' compensation, we categorised the different systems into long tail and short tail systems. So short tail was consisted of providing income support anywhere up to 5 years, whereas long tail was considered anywhere beyond 5 years and beyond, effectively to retirement. In the life insurance sector, we looked at considered income protection policies and TPD claims. We looked at defence and veterans compensation, so DVA. In motor vehicle crash compensation, we categorised systems into lump sum and statutory benefits. So statutory benefits where we would actually provide income support for return to work rather than a lump sum that was up to that person to use as required to fund the services that they needed. And then also, in certain circumstances, when people are actually able to withdraw from their super to provide an income when they're actually unable to work. So this is 10 systems, and within most of those systems there are a number of divisions already. So you might be starting to get an idea of the trickiness of what it was we were trying to undertake. So I'll try and explain the situation. So at the top here we've got the mechanism of disease or injury. So let's say in the course of employment someone was injured and unable to work. The most likely thing that's going to happen is they're going to dip into their sick leave at work and then they'll be back at work relatively quickly. What can also happen is they could actually, because it's work-related, the injury, they might actually be eligible for workers' compensation. And we know that in workers' compensation, most people enter that system, spend a small amount of time there, and most return to work. However, we know a number of people might not actually be able to make a claim, or their claim might not be accepted. Just spotted a pointer here. So they might actually have to, might not be eligible for workers' compensation and might actually require to enter the social security system to have some form of income support while they're unable to work. It could be the situation where someone who's actually injured at work but they have their own life insurance policy, such as an income protection policy, they might actually choose to enter that system because there are limits in terms of wage replacements that are available within workers' compensation, for example. So it might actually be better off if they engage in their life insurance system to provide that income support while they're unable to work. And so we've got that system, that process in place. Then there might be the situation where you've reached the end of the workers' compensation period, particularly if you're in a short tail scheme, and you might actually then, the source of your income support might be social security. You might have to progress into that system. Or you might actually qualify to be able to withdraw from your super early to provide your income support. Or again, you might actually have that life insurance policy you might be able to access. So these are the situations that can happen when you're injured at work. So it's mechanism based. Whereas if you're injured in outside of work, for example, you might have a life insurance policy that could provide your income protection insurance. If you're injured in a motor vehicle crash, you might actually be able to access income support through the system in your state. Outside of that, though, you might actually need to access social security for income support. Then, depending on the nature of the system that you've entered, you might then progress to your life insurance, be able to access superannuation, or you end up in accessing social security for income support. So we've labelled this the cascade of support systems, and it really is quite confusing, even when you're comfortable with how these systems work, let alone if you're not at your 100% capacity and you have to engage with these systems and work out what's going to happen to you next. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. And then within that cascade, we've got this slide here that aims to show you, well, there's quite a difference in your income support level that can be provided. So the orange line is the maximum amount of benefits available in the scheme for someone who's earning the average weekly, Australian average weekly wage. And this is the minimum amount. And this information is all based on the publicly available documents or the eligibility criteria for each of the systems. And you can see there's actually quite a variation depending on where you happen to live. in terms of which jurisdiction you're in. And in terms of the benefit level, you can see there's a significant drop when it comes to engaging with social services. So there is a significant difference, and all of these systems have, there's a mix of private providers, non-for-profit providers. There's a mix of state, territory and Commonwealth regulators. There is substantial variation in the income support there, but also in terms of the medical services that are provided by that income support system. So if we look at employer sick leave, well, typically there's no medical service provided as part of that. But as part of these systems here, workers' comp, DVA and motor vehicle accident compensation, typically your medical costs are covered by that scheme. But then in life insurance, well, they're actually quite limited in terms of what they can provide in terms of medical services that they're actually able to provide by law. And then in terms of social support, we're relying on Medicare, for example, for the treatment costs. So there's quite a significant variation across those different systems without even considering that complexity of how you end up in each of those systems. So if we get to the headline findings of the report, and at the time of writing the report, the 2015-16 financial year was the report where we had the most complete set of documentation, so we chose that to be the focus of our report. But in that year, there were an estimated 786,000 people who required income support from one of those systems, plus at least 6.5 million people who actually accessed their sick leave benefits from their employer. And so our estimate was that that led to over $37 billion costs of income replacement, or people being unable to work, is what's costing the Australian economy every year. And in terms of the systems, certainly the employer-provided entitlements is the largest system in terms of volume, but people will tend to spend the least time in that system. It might be for a day or two of horrific man flu that someone needs to take a day off work, but they're back at work. All cases are horrific, but they're back at work relatively quickly. The next scheme in terms of volume is looking at social security. And the thing with this scheme is that people tend to spend a long time here. Once you reach social security, particularly the disability support pension, you tend to be there for a long time. Workers' compensation was probably the next one in terms of size and expenditure. We tend to focus a lot on workers' compensation as where a lot of dollars and cents are spent. But each of the systems tends to get smaller from there. In terms of trying to categorise the services available in each of those systems, case management was the only service that was provided across all systems. But case management comes in very different forms. In terms of your employer-provided benefits, someone's got to collect your sick certificate. That's kind of your level of case management you get with your employer. But that varies all the way to the depth of case management that goes with lifetime care required for people who are seriously injured in work or motor vehicle accidents. 6 systems fund return to work services, and 5 systems fund healthcare and treatment. So one thing that's difficult here is that if you've got someone who's previously been interacting... 2 minutes? All right, I better go really fast. I'll quickly talk about common medical conditions. That the conditions that people have in these systems are very, very different. So there are a much higher proportion of, for example, cancer-related claims in the life insurance sector than there are, for example, in workers' compensation, because of that requirement to connect that injury to work. I did want to speak briefly about the movement between systems. So this part here, that there's very little data on movement of people between the systems. So we were unable to really put some numbers around the major flows of people going from one system to another. So this was a focus of the interviews with our experts from each system. And some of the themes from those interviews really were that most people return to work. We know that. That's great. But some people actually touch multiple of these systems. And it's the policy and product design that tends to determine the flow of where people go in terms of entry and exit of these systems. There are multiple gaps in coverage, and people can actually access multiple systems simultaneously. And there is not much to speak of in terms of support in terms of when people are transitioning between those systems. So we identified 7 key opportunities for aiming to improve, if you like, and within each of these categories there are 2 broad types of opportunity. One is focused on solutions, which can be around either introducing new or modified services or products, or removing services or products that might actually be counterproductive in terms of people's health and well-being. And the second opportunity was discovery, and that was about learning more about the right solution so we can target the interventions we need within each of those opportunities to make benefits within the system. I just wanted to talk briefly about one of those opportunities in detail, and it's around information and data sharing. So some tips can be, or some opportunities are actually notifying other systems when system rules or processes change. If a siloed approach is taken, if you're changing the structure for how you are accepting claims, for example, that will have flow-on effects to other systems. So there needs to be communication between systems to prepare, if you like, for what might be happening down the track. To improve the mutual understanding of how the system of systems functions and how systems interact. And the cross-sector project is a key part of actually starting to improve that understanding. Share data that can support decision-making and reduce harm. So at the moment in those different systems, if someone has to undergo a medical examination, that information sits within that system. Even if that information would be beneficial within another system, that individual has to go through that stressful process once again with different criteria for, I guess, the outcome of that assessment. And to develop common data definitions and standards to be able to allow communication between those different systems. I wanted to put this slide up. It's almost impossible to describe, but this is our map of the systems. And it strikes me as it's a bit of a solar system in terms of these are the different planets of the different systems. They're different sizes. The people on each planet are different. They move to different planets when they're finished on one planet. It's really, really complicated. And so I don't think it's rocket science to actually then think you need a collaborative approach to be able to connect the dots between each of those planets. So we end up with more people on the home planet of being at work and healthy than we have elsewhere. And very briefly, we've mentioned this before, I'm being given the wind-up, so I better get off. So the collaborative partnership is obviously the start of that. And as we heard before, there's some key projects going on in 4 of those 5 key areas already. Thanks, I'll get off.
No problem. Opportunity for you to ask questions. And I'll just bring back that other slide. Which way did you go? That way. Perfect. Okay, I want to be really quick and introduce our panel so that you have the opportunity to hear from them and also ask questions. So firstly, Ross will join us on the panel. So for those that have got further questions about the report, and there are copies down the back of the room, he'll be here to answer those. CEO Jennifer Taylor. Thank you, Jennifer. Martin Hare, Deputy Secretary of the Department of Jobs and Small Business. Thank you, Martin. Mark Coyne, Chief Executive of EML. Gillian Moses, Branch Manager for Department of Social Services, and Veronica Black, representing the ACTU. Thank you all so much. Please welcome our panel. Okay, I'll just give Veronica a second. So there's some microphones there, so feel free to pick one up. I guess that we haven't heard from you, Gillian, yet, so I thought that we might start in terms of coming off what Ross has already presented in terms of the research. What did you see in terms of the department's role and the most important thing in terms of the partnership and what we're trying to achieve? You're right.
Right. So look, I think this is a really important project for social services. You've seen from the presentation from Ross that once people get onto disability support pension or New Start allowance, they stay there for years. So for us, I think having a look at what happens upstream is really important, and looking at where we can best intervene in people's lives to get them back into work before they end up in what we call a lifetime of social services, social security. The other thing that of personal interest to me in my current role is also the opportunities around data. What can we do in linking data? There's a lot of data out there that can give us some real insights into what's happening. Ross refers to the MARDIT project, the Multi-Agency Data Integration Project, and I'm really keen to have a look at what that could tell us and what insights that could give us.
Thank you, Gillian. Now over to the AC2U. I guess from your perspective, Veronica, from the members that you represent, what most excites you around the partnership? And I guess explain to our listeners here again why the AC2U became involved.
Of course. So the ACTU is the peak body for trade unions in Australia. It has about 38 member organisations representing almost 2 million workers around Australia. I personally work for one of the affiliates of the ACTU, so I work for the union representing nurses in New South Wales. Any project or scheme that is designed and set up to improve the lives of injured workers, but that doesn't include the voices of injured workers in deciding what those projects or schemes look like, is unlikely to be highly successful. So the ACTU thinks it's incredibly important that the voices of workers and their experiences of the difficulties and barriers in returning to work are able to be heard and to be intimately involved in these discussions as part of a social dialogue, so that the outcomes that we see are actually the outcomes that we need to improve the experiences of those people. So unions hear a lot from members about where the system isn't working. So no one gives us a call to say, you know, I've had an injury and everything's going great. People call us when there are problems. And so when we're looking at the different barriers to work participation, I think we're quite uniquely placed to be able to provide information about those barriers.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you. Over to Martin now from Department of Jobs and Small Business. What has been the highlight in terms of your experience, both from your own portfolio level, but also a big part of the collaborative partnership?
Thanks. So look, probably the highlight is being able to work looking for an evidence base. So for us, there's a lot of opinion in the work that we do, a lot of value judgments made, both about our job seekers and employers together. So really for me, it was the opportunity to actually develop an evidence base, go out and ask the questions that we needed to ask to find out actually how do we work better together? How do we put job seekers and employers together in a way that we do get sustained outcomes for the benefit of both? And that's really the project that we're working on. That's the focus. So it's been a real opportunity and a real pleasure to be able to do that.
Fantastic, thank you. And that will be a project that you'll hear more about in the coming months as we work our way through the final stages of that first deliverable in the Employer Mobilisation Project. Mark, as one of the private organisations part of the collaborative partnership and one of the early, I guess, adopters of what we're trying to do, what have been some of the insights and, I guess, experiences for EML?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, obviously, to be part of the partnership, and I suppose one of the things that really triggered, my attention to the partnership is we do a lot of work for the New South Wales Police up in New South Wales, obviously, and we did a bit of customer journey mapping around the experience that they go through, and they generally interact with our team who look after the workplace injury, but also they have to interact with the life insurers as well for their death and disability protection as well. And when we did the journey mapping, it was actually quite horrific, the amount of times they had to retell their story, and if it didn't give them PTSD in the job, it certainly gave it to them after when they had to go through that process. And I think the one thing that really attracted EML to be part of this program is the opportunity to look at the fact that there's so much inefficiency across all of the schemes and how can we get better at that. I don't think it's an easy solution, but you've got to start the journey somewhere. And when you look at you can focus on the $37 billion and go, geez, that's a lot of money. But I think stepping aside from that, which actually, generally goes to the recipient, there'd be an enormous amount of wastage and the inefficiency of having so many different claims systems and claims managers, running through that program, and then also around the customer experience as well. So to me, the benefit that this program has the potential to bring is around getting more efficiency from the claims process, which will give a better experience to the worker, but also to make sure that we're more efficient and we're not spending the money that we're spending at the moment, and that then can possibly go into other research or better benefits to the workers themselves.
Yeah. Thanks, you, Mark. And to Jennifer, our CEO, and also the chair of the Collaborative Partnership, I guess in terms of our journey so far, what do you see as the key elements of success?
So from my perspective, I think it's the fact that we've got on the partnership a number of different perspectives, and we collaborate. We come together to genuinely collaborate. And for me, each of the perspectives that the partners bring is really valuable, and it allows us to expand our view of the various systems, the various journeys that individuals have to take through those systems. And the opportunity to focus, come together, have a common purpose, and the commitment that we get from all of the partner members and those who are interested in our work has really, I think, been the key element of success. Plus, of course, the hard work of your team, Natalie. Let's not forget that. But really, the fact that we have brought together people who don't normally come and talk together. So the various insurance and compensation systems and government agencies, the ACTU, individual organisations, to engage in that conversation is highly unusual. Certainly from a government perspective, we don't do that well all that often. And I think we've proven the value of taking that engagement strategy, taking that approach and bringing everyone together.
Thank you. So I am mindful of time, and I want to give everybody in the audience that may have a question the opportunity. We do have a microphone in the room. Does anyone have any questions? And I'm just going to check with our online, and there's no questions online. So no one has any questions in the room? Yes.
I just want to know, how do we stay abreast of this? So how do we stay involved in the work that you're doing, and just, how can we tap into that?
That's an excellent question. So we have a website, the Collaborative Partnership. So we also have a prospectus, and down the back of the room there is copies of these. It's also at the Comcare stand, and we're also happy to engage myself, Jennifer, but also there are a number of delegates here today at Comcare that would be more than happy to engage, as I know our founding partners are also happy to talk about the work that we're doing and to have organisations provide support. I don't know if anyone in the panel also wants to comment on that?
No, I think the website's the best way to stay in touch, and that's where a lot of the research is published, and as further research comes out and projects get further down the track, the website's the place to be.
Excellent. In terms of closing, one of the things that I wanted to ask the panel to kind of reflect on in your own ways was around the future direction and possibilities. What do you see in terms of the Collaborative Partnership and where we're at now, and what we think, where you'd like to see it go?
I'll start. So the stream that EML is leading is around the employee stream, and the employee stream is all around trying to get a better understanding how we can better empower the workers to have more control over the treatment and their ability to get back to work. And we've only just sort of started that bit of research going off. So I mean, ultimately, where we'd like to see it is where we can hear from the voice of the workers and understand why do they feel disempowered in the systems that they operate within, and how can we look at reducing the fact that they feel like they're caught up in bureaucratic red tape at times, and give them more empowerment to just get on and get back to work and self-manage themselves.
Thank you, Mark.
Look, from our perspective, I talked earlier about the evidence base, but the next step of our project is the piece that's also really exciting me, which is actually trialling tools, actually thinking about how can we make a real difference for employers so they know what they're doing, that they're confident in what they do, and they feel really comfortable employing people who may have a disability, or in fact probably improving their employee management significantly anyway. But that chance to make a real difference in the lives of people in workplaces is a really important opportunity for us.
For social services, I think the next steps on the cross sectors project are quite exciting also, because we're looking at trialling different ways of working together, upstream and downstream, and seeing if we can get some efficiencies and making that real through some trials. As well as Martin says, the data is really important, so having a look at what we can do with the data we've already got at the Commonwealth level to start with, to build some insight. So I'm actually quite excited to hear what happens through the trials that we're putting in place.
And I think from the ACTU perspective, the further we're looking into it, and each of the projects has had a fairly major research piece attached to it, so the more we find out, the more we see that there is to do. And so it's not like I can see any of those areas being things that could be quickly wound up and yes, we've finished all that we need to do now about employer mobilisation, or we've finished all we need to do now about employee engagement and empowerment. So I think that there'll be some considerable work to do for quite some time yet.
And I agree. I think we've only just started. I said earlier it feels like a long journey in our transition from health benefits of good work through to the start-up of the collaborative partnership. But I think this is a really exciting phase, because we are starting to gather the evidence base and do something with it. So the trials that we talk about, trying new ways, I mean, not all of them will work, not all of them will be successful. And that's interesting to us too, because we want to find out what doesn't work as well as what does work, so that can guide all of us in the work that we do. So we really are at an exciting phase. I think it's just going to grow from strength to strength. The interest we've had from a huge number of organisations and individuals in the work of the partnership. It's a unique thing in Australia. It's very rare to find such a group of diverse interests who've come together to focus on a particular issue, and with genuine and real commitment to try and find solutions. So, yeah, I think its future's bright.
Thank you. So thank you. Please welcome. Please help me thank the panel, tongue-tied, for today's discussion. And also, I'd like to remind you all that we are interested and keen to hear from those that want to be part of the collaborative partnership, and in any small or big way in terms of the work that we are doing. We do have a full program of work set for the next couple of years, as Veronica's pointed out, and the problems that we are talking about and the issues that we're looking to solve are complex, and we need all of us to work together. So please join me in thanking the panel.